Well, we've heard from politicians and the press, but what about the people who will be most affected by what happens at the Capitol? A new poll is giving us a better idea of what Texans are thinking about the issues facing this state and of the people in charge. So we want to get some insight. For that, we're pleased to bring on Jim Henson, the executive director of the Texas Politics Project and Mild Professor of Government from the University of Texas. Jim, thanks for coming on.
Great to be back. A+ intro.
Jim, your poll asked Texans what they think about state government, specifically whether it's addressing the needs of the people right now, and the numbers weren't great. What is your takeaway on that?
Yeah, it was very interesting. We gave people a pair of sets of oppositions where you said, do you agree with this statement or that statement? And the key finding there was that only 37% of Texans said that they thought that state government met the needs of Texans. 46%, the plurality, said they didn't. This tracks with some of our long-standing kind of right track, wrong track numbers, things we've seen, but there's definitely a skepticism about responsiveness out there right now.
To put it mildly, these numbers show that people may not have a high regard for their state government. But what about the people in charge of that government? Lieutenant Governor Patrick, Governor Abbott, do they have different opinions about the people?
Well, interestingly enough, the leadership in the state got a little bit of a bump now that we're out of campaign season, not as much negative advertising. And after all, the people we're polling on are the winners, and people tend to be a little more positive about winners. So everybody went up a little bit, particularly Governor Abbott. He had probably the best ratings that we've seen him get in over a year. Same with Lieutenant Governor Patrick, and same with virtually all of the statewide officials. So none of them are over 50%. So we don't want to exaggerate the gap, but they're doing better.
You again polled people asking Texans what their top issues are facing the state right now. Any surprises there?
Not too much. I mean, very familiar results. Immigration and border security topped that list, fueled by Republican focus on immigration and border security that we saw during the election has carried through. Almost 2/3 of Republicans say that immigration and border security are the most important problems facing the state.
Well, one of the most valuable things about the Texas Politics Project, I think, is you can track the same questions over a large span of time. You've been asking Texans whether they think the state is headed on the right track or the wrong track for a long time now. What are the latest results and the trends they're showing?
Well, again, we saw some improvement as we did with the statewide officials, but nothing to really write home about. So just under 50% said the state was headed on the wrong track, but that's the first time it's been under 50% in almost a year.
And as we head into the upcoming legislative session, what would you say are some of the standouts from this poll?
Well, one of the things that we asked a lot of questions about business and policy in the state. And there were a lot of interesting results in that. One of the things we did was ask Texans whether they thought business was doing too little or too much on a range of hot button issues that the legislature is paying a lot of attention to business policy on. Interestingly enough, the top response in which Texans said that business was doing too little was climate change. Almost half said that business was doing too little on climate change. I think that's going to be a very active issue going into the session.
And then back to the polling you did on a couple different leaders. You also did some polling on Speaker of the House, Dade Phelan. He's set to take over the gavel again, but he didn't seem to there weren't a lot of opinions on him based on your polling.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, one of the things we found was that about half of Texans have no view of Speaker Phelan. Now, compared to the more prominent statewide officials, that may seem like kind of an eyebrow raiser. It's very typical, in fact. Now, on one hand, 50% is almost a little bit low if you go back to speakers before the social media era. So Speaker Phelan actually looks pretty good for a speaker. Fave unfave's about even. It's one of the old saws of Texas government. If you're a speaker, you really don't want to be known by that many people because you don't stand for statewide election.
Right.
The only people that elect you are those in your district. There's really mostly downside to being known statewide.
The odds that you're known statewide for a good reason is probably less than a bad reason.
Yeah, particularly when you put it in the context with all these other numbers we saw that are, where there's a lot of negativity.
Gotcha. All right. We always appreciate your insight as always. Jim Henson from the Texas Politics Project. Thanks
Love
for joining
being
us.
here with you all.
Thanks
you.
for coming
Happy
on.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Women making history in the Texas House.
The more inclusive a body can be, I think the better results you have because you have more voices at the table.
The next legislature will have more women serving than ever before. We'll meet some of those new lawmakers and how they could change the debate at the Capitol.